Hey everybody, Pritch here. You're here for HealBrand training, so let's get right into it. Alright, first things first, we're going to go in and do our specs. So, as a HealBrand, you're going to be running the Virtues trait line, the Honor trait line, and the Firebrand trait line. In Virtues, you're taking 2, 2, 2. In Honor, you're taking 1, 1, 2. And in Firebrand, you are taking 2, 1, 3. On top of your specs right here, you're also going to be needing your gear. So let's talk about gear for a second. You're going to be running full Harrier's gear. You're going to be running an axe, a shield, and a staff. And then I have full Harriers on all trinkets as well. For a quick sec, let's talk about that, because if you use your HealBrand, you're probably using it in fractals, in raids, in strikes. You're typically running a HealBrand in instanced content with 5 to 10 people. As you do it in fractals, if you're running full Harrier gear, you are actually overcapped on concentration. And for those that don't know, concentration is basically the same thing as boon duration or boon uptime. If you run full Harrier's gear and you're not in fractals, then your boon uptime is perfect. If you run it in fractals, it'll actually be overcapped by a little bit. So what some people will do is, instead of running full Harrier trinkets, they will run a couple trinkets that aren't Harriers because they don't need the extra concentration. What I recommend is, if you plan on using the HealBrand for something or anything outside of fractals, just do full Harriers. I run full Harriers for fractals and I do CMs, and it works just fine. It just makes your life easy and it's way nice. Just be lazy, basically. Just be lazy and do full Harriers. You're always going to be running, or at least for me, I always run an axe and a shield and a staff. Some people like to run a mace instead of an axe occasionally, but I will only be teaching you with an axe because I think it's better in basically every scenario. So, full Harrier gear. I do full Harrier trinkets. We have the specs lined up here, and then let me talk about our utility slots here. So, no matter what, you are always going to run the healing mantra, the quickness and might mantra, and feel my wrath. These two slots here, mostly this one right here, the mantra of lore, where it's going to give Condi Cleanse, is going to be something that I will show later in the video, that there is an alternate path. You don't always have to bring this one. You could bring Hold the Line instead, and I will get to that at the end of the video. For now, I'm going to explain it in the same way that Snow Crows would have you do it, for example. And I'll post a link to the Snow Crows HealBrand page for anyone that's curious. And then typically, probably 90% of the time, this is going to be stand your ground, but our 9th slot here is going to be our utility slot, where, depending on the fight, maybe we don't need utility, but maybe we need, reflection. We'll bring Wall of Reflection. Maybe we need additional healing. We'll bring Bow of Truth. But I'll get to that once we get to those parts. So first thing to do is kind of go over a pre-buff rotation, because when you play HealBrand, if you know the pre-buff rotation really well, you can start to implement that and use that whenever you actually are running it in-game, not just when you're standing at a mist lock in a fractal. And for those that aren't aware, in fractals, there are things called mist locks. Anytime that you interact with it, it resets the cooldowns of all your abilities. So what people do is they have the HealBrand pre-buff them before running into a fight. So the HealBrand will use a bunch of skills and abilities to apply a lot of boon durations on a lot of different boons, then grab the Mistlock to reset all their cooldowns, and then run into the fight. So what I'm going to show you is what you should be doing as the HealBrand to pre-buff your team. And it kind of goes in 3 different segments, and we're going to take it each segment at a time. But we're going to be pausing and talking for quite a bit on the first segment, because it involves blasting some fields, and that in and of itself deserves a little bit of an explanation. So before we get into anything, I just want to make you guys aware that in the game, in Guild Wars 2, there are certain skills and abilities that create fields. And these fields can be different types of fields. As HealBrands, we are concerned with light fields, and we are concerned with fire fields for the most part. For example, if I cast Staff 3 right here on the ground, I have just created a light field. And if you're ever curious what creates what, when you hover over the skills or abilities, you can see right here, underneath symbol radius and above range, it tells you combo field light. So right here, this is going to create a light field. Now, creating a field doesn't actually do anything. You need to have another ability that interacts with fields. So for here, as a HealBrand, that is going to be our staff 2. You'll see underneath pulses and above range, it says combo finisher blast. So when we play HealBrand, when we use our staff 2, this skill right here, and we do this, if that interacts with a field, that will create an additional effect. And that is comboing fields. This applies in other cases for other classes as well with other different types of fields, but for right now we're only concerned about HealBrand, so I'm only going to talk about HealBrand specific things. But this is something you can check out with all different builds. So, the first part of the pre-buff is staff 3, count 1, 2, 3, tome 1, 5, 4, staff 2. Alright. That is the first part of the pre-buff. Staff 3, wait 3 seconds, tome 1, 5, 4, out of tome, staff 2. Now, let me show you what happens if... What? For those that aren't aware, by the way, I am in the training area. And when you're in the training area with the training golem in the raid fractal lobby, the special action key is supposed to reset all your skills and abilities. I said what because I pressed it and tome 1 didn't reset, which was a little weird. Let me show you what happens when I do not wait 3 seconds. So, staff 3, straight into tome 1, straight into this, straight into that, straight into that. Boom. Okay. If you guys caught it, good job. If you didn't, let me go over what just happened. So, I used staff 3, then tome 1, then 5, 4, 2. I did it the same way, and there was 2 different effects because I did it in 2 different ways. One I didn't wait, and one I did wait. So, when you interact a light field with a blast finisher, you AoE Condi Cleanse. Area Condi Cleanse just happened. So anytime as a HealBrand that you put staff 3 down and then immediately use staff 2, you're going to blast out an area Condi Cleanse, which is very helpful in the middle of a lot of fights. But we don't want that for the pre-buff. For the pre-buff, instead, we're pressing Tome 1, which as you can see, when you press Tome 1... Actually, let's go out of here and just show you for a sec again. Focus on my buff bar right here, alright? So, why is this not resetting? Come on, ArenaNet. Fix your stuff. There we go. Alright, so, the moment I press Tome 1, I'm going to get some buffs here, alright? I'm going to get Retaliation, Might, and Quickness. Alright, just from pressing the tome. I haven't even pressed any of the buttons in the tome yet. Alright, we're going to press Skill 5, which is called Ashes of Just, and that's going to give everybody in the party the ability to do burning on their next couple of auto attacks. This is going to increase everyone's DPS by a little bit. But if you have Condi Firebrands on your team, this will increase the Condi Firebrands DPS by like 5 to 6k. So this is a big, big, big buff to give, especially when you have Condi Firebrands. The second thing you're doing is you're pressing Skill 4. Now, this skill in and of itself does not create any buffs. What it does do is create a fire field. If you notice underneath the radius thing, it says Combo Field Fire. So, we are creating a nice big fire circle for a little bit here. And what we want to do is we want to blast that fire field. So, when you press 4, come immediately out in staff 2 to blast the field, you have now created Might for 40 or 38 seconds of Might just from blasting that fire field. So, when we pre-buff, and at any point in time during the fight, if you want a little extra Might, you go to Tome 1, you do that 4th ability, which is the fire field, and then you instantly blast it with Holy Strike, which is staff 2. So, that's why the first part of the pre-buff is staff 3, wait 3 seconds. And we're waiting 3 seconds because we want to blast the fire field from Tome 4, or sorry, from Tome 3 skill, from Tome 1 skill 4, I apologize. So, Tome 1, skill 4, and then instantly into staff 2, we want to blast that fire field. So, what happens if you don't wait is that staff 3 is still on the ground by the time that you're casting Holy Strike. So I'm going to go again without waiting and watch what happens. It's going to do a Condi cleanse even though I'm doing Holy Strike after I do the fire field. Staff 3 is still on the ground and takes priority, which means we need to wait for that to go off. And if you don't, if you watch, you go fast here. All right, staff 3 is still on the ground, fire field's up, and we just did an area Condi cleanse. We did not gain might. So that's why we wait 3 seconds. All right, so staff 3, 3 seconds, tome 1, 5, 4, staff 2. All right, immediately once we come out of staff 2, we're going to do the second part of the pre-buff now. All right, the second part of the pre-buff is honestly very straightforward, and it just takes a little bit of practice. All right, something you need to know is that these mantras right here are doing, when you cast a mantra, it does not interrupt or have any cast time to them, which means you could be in the middle of doing something and still be casting your mantras at the exact same time. Just for everyone's awareness, if you haven't seen a mantra before, a mantra shoots out in a cone out in front of you. Anybody out in front of you that's in that cone radius gets hit with your mantras. And we'll go over what these mantras do here in a second, but I want you to know that you can cast your mantras at any time and they do not interrupt anything you're doing. And it's important to know that because a lot of times, and especially for the pre-buff, you need to use them while you're doing another skill and ability. So let's talk about Empower for a second. You press Empower, you crouch down or do whatever animation you're doing, and you're blasting out Might. And on top of blasting out Might, you are also doing a lot of healing. So Empower, you stand still for a couple seconds, you're giving Might, and you're giving healing. While you are doing Empower, you can get off 2 different rotations of your mantras. So watch real carefully. I'm going to go Empower, Mantra, 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 Mantra. I suck. All right, let's reset those. Let's not miss our skills and abilities. There we go. So Empower, Mantra, 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 Mantra. And by the time Empower is done, I have cycled 6 mantras out. I've pressed each mantra twice that I have, right? And we're running 3 different mantras. So the second part of the rotation is Empower, Mantra, 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 Mantra. And we're doing the mantras while we are in Empower, all right? That's going to just save us time and save us boon duration and all the other boons that we've already generated. So once again, one more time, Empower, Mantra, 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 Mantra. All right? And when you're good at it, you can get off your mantras before Empower is even done finishing. So let's talk about the mantras for 2 seconds because we're running them and we're using them in the pre-buff. So let's just talk about what they're doing. The first mantra right here is your healing mantra. More importantly, every time you press a mantra, you are giving people quickness. Quickness is the #1 buff, and I'm going to get into that when we talk about the HealBrand's roles, jobs, and responsibilities. But be aware that quickness uptime is probably the most important thing as to why you are playing a HealBrand. So it's very important to know when you press any 3 of these mantras, you're giving quickness. All right? So the first one gives quickness, it gives healing, and most importantly, you are giving anybody hit in Aegis for 2.5 seconds, which means if you time this ability well with a lot of different mechanics in boss fights, you can give your teammates Aegis. It has a reduced It has a reduced recharge time of about 9 seconds. So after you cast it, you have about 9 seconds before you get an additional charge back. And you can see this little white bar that's slowly going around the circle here to indicate when I'm going to get another charge back. And I get 3 and I can do again. You can hold 3 charges at one time, and it's always, always, always recommended that you never keep your charges at 3. I personally always keep my charges at 2 because 1, you're never going to use the final charge of any of your mantras. Never use the final charge of any mantras. If you do, so for example, if I use this final charge, now I have to wait 30 seconds before the cooldown comes back, and then I have to take an additional 3 seconds just to charge the mantra back up again. So you never, ever, ever use the last charge of your mantras, all right? You always want to be in that sweet spot of having 2, And then that way, if you need to do an additional thing, like such as block a mechanic, or maybe you're doing a bursting amount of healing or something like that, you can use that second charge to go down to 1 charge, and you're still going to be fine. So anytime you see your mantras at 3 charges, you should be pressing them at least once each. So the first mantra is healing, quickness, and Aegis. Aegis is the big one, all right? Second mantra, we have the mantra of potence, all right? This is quickness and might. That's basically what this is for. It jacks up your allies, and it makes them powerful, all right? Quickness and might. I'm almost always casting these together. The final one is mantra of lore. This is your Condi cleanse mantra, all right? It's a Condi cleanse. It's a little bit of healing. Actually, it's a lot of healing. It gives a lot of regen. So you use this mantra to Condi cleanse. You can Condi cleanse 2 conditions at once with it. And the same as the other mantras, they have 9 seconds of recharge time. All of these mantras will come back every single time at the same time. So when I press them like that, they all have the exact same... They all have the exact same recharge speed to them. All right? So they're always going to be up on the same times. Okay. Those are your 3 mantras. Again, it's empower. Mantra. I suck. And that is the second part of the rotation. So if we put it together with the first part of the rotation, we staff 3. 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 2. Empower. Mantra. All right? And that in and of itself is giving us 25 stacks of might, a bunch of quickness, a bunch of regen, and a bunch of swiftness. All right? For the final part, so now that was part 1 and part 2 combined, let's do part 3, easily the hardest part of the entire thing. Press your 9 and 10th ability. That's it. Just press stand your ground and press feel my wrath. So boom. That's the end. That's the third part of the pre-buff. Is just those right there. And those in them of themselves do a lot. And when this ability isn't stand your ground, let's say it's wall of reflection, or let's say it's bow of truth, you're not even going to press this button. You're just going to press feel my wrath. The moment you have pressed stand your ground and feel my wrath, grab the mistlock and start running in, because your buffs are going to start depreciating in their time value, right? So you want to go as quick as possible. So the full rotation, the full pre-buff. Staff 3. 1, 2, 3. Tome 1. 5, 4, 2. Empower. Mantra. Stand your ground. Feel my wrath. Look at that buff bar. All right. Beautiful, sexy, a bunch of time on a bunch of these big buffs, right? And then you're gonna grab the mistlock, and it's going to instantly reset all of your skills and abilities before you even start the fight. So that is the pre-buff rotation. That is how you pre-buff on HealBrand every single time. It's worth noting that as a HealBrand, you are providing basically every boon in the game except for Alacrity. Essentially every boon in the game, right? The big thing, and why you're basically always running Feel My Wrath, is 1, quickness uptime, and 2, Fury uptime. For those that aren't aware, Fury is basically crit damage. Crit chance. No, Fury is crit damage. No, Fury is crit chance. It's additional crit chance. I'm losing my mind here. I'm thinking about ferocity like an idiot. Sorry. Fury is crit chance. We always basically, every build is designed around having 100% Fury uptime, which a HealBrand can get very, very, very close to and do very well if they pre-buff right and are using Feel My Wrath basically off cooldown. And more importantly, we can talk about the Axe abilities right now. All right. So Axe 2 right here, you throw it down, and anytime you stand in Axe 2, it is pulsing out Fury, right? So I have a bunch of Fury that I've gotten just from standing in Axe 2, which is why I always use Axe over Maces. Maces cannot provide Fury, and Fury is a huge part of these fights for DPS players. A lot of builds, especially like power DPS builds, need Fury to be at 100% crit. and you are the person that is supposed to be giving them fury. You can't do that well if you don't have an axe in. So again, I highly recommend just never run mace, always run axe. So axe 2 lays down a field. That field gives out a bunch of fury per tick. You see this ticking up every single time. Let's talk about your CC abilities now as a HealBrand. As a HealBrand, you do not have a bunch of CC in your kit. Your CC is axe 3, which literally just save axe 3 for whenever there's a CC phase, and shield 5. So shield 5 is an interesting type of CC ability. So let's say, for example, that this golem spawner right here is the enemy, right? If I use my shield right here and then I run into him so that my shield would hit the boss, that will not do CC break bar damage. You have to activate the skill while the bubble would be hitting the target. If you activate it while close enough to hit the target in the bubble, that would cause a knockback, which will do CC damage. So, Axe 3, CC. Shield 5, also CC. You just have to be close to the boss, which in most fights you are, so it's not a big deal to worry about. Just be aware of your positioning when you activate it, all right? Another thing that you can do if you need additional CC is when you're in Tome 1, because remember, as a HealBrand, you're not using Tome 1 for damage. You're here to give people Ashes of Justice, you're here to create a fire field to blast for might, and if you need, you can use skill 3 to do another additional CC damage. And this gives you, a recharge time of about 5 seconds. So if you need, you can cast it again and just stay in Tome 1 to cast an additional time to do even more CC break bar damage. All right, so we've talked about Symbol of Swiftness. All right, that gives swiftness. We've talked about Holy Strike. This is what you're blasting fields with, so this is what creates your combos. It also heals people. We've talked about Empower. Let's talk about Line of Warding just for a quick second. This skill is basically useless and almost never going to be used. It's basically never used. What you can do with it, though, if you wanted to, let's say that we're in the middle of a fight and you need to Condi Cleanse, but you've just used your Staff 3. Your Staff 3 is on cooldown and you're not in the circle anymore. Let's say you've ran over here now, right? The boss ran over here. This Line of Warding is actually a combo field, and it's a light combo field. So for those that don't know, you can cast it, Staff 2 on top of it, and also create an area Condi Cleanse using Staff 5 with Staff 2. So it's another way to basically just Condi Cleanse yourself. If you need the quick Condi Cleanse, just be aware that this is a combo field light, and when paired with the Blast Finisher, you're going to get that Condi Cleanse. That's about all the usefulness out of Line of Warding you're going to get. Axe 2 is it does a little bit of damage, and it gives Fury. It's a lot of Fury uptime. Axe 3 is CC, Shield 5 is CC. Shield 5 is also a projectile blocking mechanic, so anytime there's a lot of projectiles, you put this up, you make sure you're around your team, so your team is in the bubble, and none of the projectiles are going to hit them. Finally, let's talk about Shield 4. This is going to give Aegis and Protection. Protection for 8 seconds, Aegis for 8 seconds. So you just blast it out in front of you, and think of it like a little bit of a longer mantra, basically. So this mantra gives it an Aegis for 2 seconds. This gives an Aegis for 8 seconds. So it's just another ability to block damage or block a mechanic for your team. All right? So we've talked about all the skills and abilities. We've talked about what you're going to use when. Again, this is your utility slot. 90% of the time you want stability. Stand Your Ground gives a bunch of stacks of stability for 12 seconds. It also gives retaliation. For those that aren't aware, stability, when you use it, has a number attached to it. Think of it like ticks of Aegis, but not Aegis. Instead, ticks for knockdowns and interrupts and stuff like that. So for stability in this game, in Guild Wars 2, when you get hit with something and you have stability, it takes a tick of stability away, and the remaining ticks are there in case you get hit with more stability things. Some skills and abilities only give you 1 stack, though, of stability. Stand Your Ground gives 5 stacks for 12 seconds, and which is why it's basically the premier stability using ability in the game right now. It is also a 10-man ability, which means if you run raids, which is 10-man content, Stand Your Ground gets all 10 of you, as long as everyone's in range within 600 units of you. So that is why Stand Your Ground is basically the premier stability using shout at the moment, and an ability in the game basically right now. Alright, so we know how to pre-buff, we know what our skills and abilities do, we know how to blast combo fields. Let's talk about Tome 3 and Tome 2 now for a second, alright? Because these are huge parts of being a HealBrand. Let's start with Tome 3. Tome 3 is we need a lot of stability and or resistance. Resistance is basically the ability to stop conditions or stop the applying of conditions. So think of stability like, okay, this stops knockdowns. Think of resistance as, okay, this stops conditions. You'll notice that as soon as I press Tome 3, I'm going to gain some buffs. I'm going to gain protection, retaliation, and quickness. So the moment I press it, I've suddenly gained buffs, and my team has gained buffs just by me pressing the Tome. Haven't even pressed any abilities yet. Alright, let's talk about all the abilities now that you're going to be using. Okay. Number 5 here is going to give protection and stability and Aegis. Alright, on top of that, if you read, it's going to give unbroken lines for 5 seconds. For 5 seconds, everyone is going to gain 300 toughness. Now, 300 toughness basically means that people can take hits way easier. Think of it like armor and almost like protection in and of itself. Like, you just can get hit for more damage, basically, because you're going to take reduced damage. You're going to get unbroken lines, you're going to get protection, you're going to get stability, and you're going to get Aegis. Now, when I press it, you are only going to get 1 stack of stability. Only 1. So keep that in mind if there's something that's going to do multiple shock waves or multiple things that will knock you down. This ability is only going to block 1 of those things. All right? So you go into Tome 3, you press 5. Then immediately you press 4. So 5 is the long-lasting stability and toughness, and that's a big thing. 4 is the long-lasting resistance. All right, it's going to pulse out 4 times, each pulse giving 2 seconds of resistance, so giving you a total of 8 seconds of resistance, which is going to give you the effect that condies on you don't actually do anything and are ineffective. So in other words, when I press this, everyone that's standing in this circle right here gets this buff, gets this resistance. And this resistance makes it so, like, let's say I have every Condi in the game on me. Let's say I'm feared, I am immobilized, I am chilled, I'm slow, I'm XYZ, you name it. I press this button, anybody standing in there has none of those Condis doing anything to them. Alright, for 8 seconds. It's a very, very, very strong ability. Probably the strongest thing in Tome 3. So, you go into Tome 3, you press 5, you press 4, and then now we get into fight-specific mechanics. If you're in a fight with a lot of projectiles and you need to block projectiles, you're going to instantly cast Tome 3, Skill 3. Think of this like a smaller Shield 5. It creates a bubble. Everyone in the bubble is safe from projectiles. These projectiles, when used this way, do reflects, which means any projectile coming in that would hit reflects the projectile back to the source and does damage to that source. Shield 5 absorbs the projectiles, which means it does not reflect and hit back. Tome 3, Skill 3 reflects, which means it'll hit back at the target to do damage. Alright? So if it's a fight where you need reflex, you're going to go 5, 4, 3. Alright? If it's not a fight that needs reflex, you're going to go 5, 4, and then you're going to go 1, 1, 1. Alright? And 1 is, think of it the same way as a mantra. Alright? It blasts out in a cone in front of you, and it gives a lot of swiftness, and it gives a big, long-lasting stack of stability. And when you press it again, boom. Now it resets the stack of stability. All right. So that's why you can go 5, 4, 1, 1, 1, and try and time those ones when the other ones are coming off, so that you can get a bunch of stability out of the kit to a bunch of people. All right. So I'll reset it again. We'll look into it. A normal thing would be 5, 4, 1, 1, 1. And you can try and time those ones so that you're timing them properly to not like overlap with each other, if that makes any sense. All right. Now, let me show you what I tend to wind up doing for a lot of fights when there's projectiles. Again, projectiles are when things are shooting stuff at you that are basically like auto attacks or missiles or XYZ, like especially CM99, boss number 2. Everything in that fight is basically a projectile. So, when it's projectile based, 5, 4, 3, and then sit. Don't do anything. Don't press any of these buttons. Don't use anything else. And then once it's back, you're going to use 3 and 4 again. All right? So it's 5, 4, 3. And then you're going to go back and wait for the cooldowns on them and do 3 and 4 again. The reason we're doing that is because we want to maximize bubble uptime and maximize the condition not doing anything to us uptime. And it's really, really nice, and it's really, really helpful. So keep that in mind. Those are kind of the different ways to use Tome 3. All right. So Tome 3 is, oh crap, we need stability or reflex. Tome 2 is, oh crap, we need a lot of heals and we need a lot of Condi cleanse. All right. So 2 is the, oh crap, big heal button. Right. Especially in fractals, you're basically, also the healer. Like, you're the boon uptime and you're also the healer. So this is where Tome 2 comes into play. You're going to notice the moment that I press Tome 2, I'm going to get some additional things. Tome of Resolve, which is going to heal a little bit, and it's going to give endurance regen. And for those that don't know, when you dodge roll, you lose endurance. This bar right here is endurance. And so whenever you see endurance regen and things like vigor, that increases your regen for your dodge roll, which means you can dodge roll more during fights. So we hover over Tome 2. We're going to get the endurance regen. We're going to get stacks of regen. We're going to get retaliation, and we're going to get quickness. All right, so just by pressing it, we've already gained these 3 buffs, just by pressing the Tome. We haven't even pressed any of the buttons. All right, so when we go into Tome 2, no matter what scenario it is, I always do the exact same rotation, no matter what, every single time. So that makes this Tome really, really easy. All right, and it's very similar to Tome 3 in how it plays out. Right? Every single time you go into Tome 2, immediately press Skill 5. Skill 5 is going to do 2 big things for us. First, it's going to give us a Condi flip, which is all conditions that you had are now flipped into boons. I say all. It's 5 of them. If you have more than 5 conditions, then yikes, good luck. But it's going to flip 5 conditions into boons, into their reciprocal boons. So for example, if I had 5 seconds of slow on me and then I pressed Tome 2 skill 5, that slow now becomes 5 seconds of quickness, if that makes any sense. So immediately press skill 5. The second thing it does is Eternal Oasis, which is 33% heal effectiveness, which means now for 8 seconds, every healing ability that I do is now 33% more effective and does additional healing. So that's why we press it first, and that's how we immediately get rid of Condi cleanses. This is the animation for it. You'll see that go off. You'll see the buff right here for Eternal Oasis. So after we press skill 5, we immediately are going to double-click skill 3, and this is going to give Azure Sun. This gives Vigor, which is what I was talking about earlier, the 50% endurance regen, which means that I'm regenning my endurance faster when I have Vigor. All right? It's also going to give regen, and it's also going to give swiftness, and it's also going to give a lot of regen that heals a lot. Okay, so we've pressed 5, we pressed 3, and now literally all it is 1, 1, 1. That's all it is. 5, 3, 1, 1, 1. Every single time, no matter what. So, full rotation, 5, 3, 1, 1, 1. And again, I'm doing this with no quickness on. I'm doing this with no alacrity on, so that's why everything looks so slow. But when you have a bunch of quickness and you have a bunch of alacrity, things go a lot faster. And you also get a bunch of cooldowns. Just to show you guys, skill 1 is exactly the same thing as your mantras. It's a mantra coned, like AoE in front of you sort of attack. So make sure you're aiming at your teammates, and all it is just healing. It's straight up just healing, right? It's also a very nice thing if you can. After you pressed 5, 3, 1, 1, 1, you should press your mantra at least once or twice, because this mantra actually does like more healing than this mantra basically. So mantra of solace is more powerful than desert bloom. So we're really coming in here for the additional effectiveness, for the vigor and the regen, and then we're basically pressing these to get most of our team up to full health again. So again, 5, 3, 1, 1, 1. You just spam them, and then while you're doing that, you can also press those as well. And that is how you use Tome 2. Straight up. So let's talk about kind of the role of HealBrand and what your job is and what your focus should be. So, excuse me. So as a HealBrand, your number one responsibility is quickness uptime. There's a boon in the game called quickness. Quickness, as you can see right here in the corner, says it grants skills and actions are 33% faster. All right, so if I press it and there's quickness right here, everything I do now goes 33% faster than if I hadn't had quickness. Quickness is one of the best buffs in the game, and HealBrands can have 100% quickness uptime when you're playing the role and the class correctly. So let's talk about the sources of quickness real fast. Your sources of quickness are Feel My Wrath, all of your mantras, and anytime you press any of your tomes. All right? That is how you generate quickness for your team. So if you're pressing your mantras every time they're at 3 stacks, if you're pressing Feel My Wrath off cooldown, and if you're successfully going into Tome 1 every time it's off cooldown, you're set, basically. Like, you are absolutely going to have 100% uptime, and you're doing your main job, and you're doing it really well. And when I say go into Tome 1, when I'm in the middle of a fight, and if the fight does not require me to have Condi cleanses, like if I don't need to immediately Condi cleanse something for my team, and like for example, even if I do, I'm probably just going to use my mantra anyways, because the mantra is a faster and better Condi cleanse. I will always, when Tome 1 is up, I will make sure I'm on staff. I will immediately Tome 1, 5, 4, and I will blast this field every single time. Because every time I do that, I'm giving my team 6 additional stacks of might for 30-something seconds, right? And I want to keep my might uptime as close to 25% as humanly possible. So every time you're in the fight and Tome 1 comes back off cooldown, try your best, obviously depending on the mechanics, but try your best to get back in there and do that first part of the rotation. Do that Tome 1, 5, 4, staff 2. Blast that fire field, all right? That is also going to give you quickness as well. So let's talk about your secondary role now. We've talked about quickness, which is your main role. Your secondary role is going to be mitigating mechanics. Now, this is going to be the reason why heal branding is actually very difficult to do until you have learned and mastered all the fights that you are trying to use heal brand in. I shouldn't say mastered, but you need to know the mechanics, right? If I'm going to tell you to prevent something or stop something, you need to know how that something works, right? You need to know what the boss is going to do in order to know what you have in your kit to prevent it. And a lot of times, most of the time, for you as a heal brand, that means knowing when to press stand your ground, like knowing when to give stability, knowing when to Condi cleanse, and knowing when to put down bubbles and reflects, right? So that means knowing when to negate a knockback, knowing when you need to block projectiles, knowing when you need to give Aegis to your team, and knowing when you're going to have a bunch of Condis on you so that you can use your Condi cleanses. And that is the secondary and almost equally important role of a heal brand, is using your skills and abilities at the right times. And along with those things, it's Aegis. It's a lot of it is Aegis. You have a lot of different ways to give Aegis a lot of the times. Mainly Tome 1, mainly your heal mantra. This has a 9-second recharge and holds 2 charges that you're going to use whenever you want or need. You technically 3, but you're never going to use the 3rd one, right? So you need to use that at appropriate times to just block stuff for your team. You also have it on your Shield 4 here. This is another form of Aegis. You also have it on Tome 3 as soon as you go into Tome 3. There's a lot of ways you can provide Aegis, which is a block for your team. So it's timing your Aegis as well. Alright, so rule number 1, keep your quickness uptime as close to 100% as possible. Rule number 2, learn how to mitigate all the mechanics of fights as much as you can. You can't always mitigate every fight, every mechanic. But, and especially for fractals, you can mitigate a lot of mechanics. A lot. Alright? And those are fight-specific kind of things. So, finally, the third kind of big part of being a HealBrand is you provide just about every single boon in the game except for Alacrity. And that's the Alax job, that's the Renegade's job. We're not going to talk about any of that stuff right now. But you need to be aware that, in my opinion, if you can do 100% quickness uptime, alright, you're at a decent starting point. If you can do the pre-buff rotation and have 100% quickness uptime, we're at a really good starting point. If you've now learned how to mitigate a lot of mechanics, we are in a really good point, and I'm going to consider you a pretty good HealBrand. Now, to get from pretty good to, wow, this dude knows what he's doing, on top of mitigating everything and on top of quickness uptime, you are going to have very, very, very good boon uptime on all of the additional boons that you can provide. Which means for swiftness, you basically have 100% swiftness uptime, which lets people run around faster. All right. Your quickness uptime, we already talked about that. Your might stacking, if you are very, very good at it and intentional about when you're using might and everything and all your mantras and empower and tome 1 and all that kind of stuff, you can maintain 22 stacks of might by yourself very consistently. And for everyone watching, you max at 25 stacks, so which is only 3 might stacks away, and your Alax should be helping you with the other 3. So 22 stacks of might on your own. Fury uptime when done properly, and again for Fury, we're talking Axe 2 and Feel My Wrath. That in and of itself gives you a lot of Fury. We're talking over 32 seconds of Fury. All right. You can keep your Fury uptime, which again is 20% chance of crit that every single one of your DPS classes needs. You can have 100% uptime on Fury. So we're talking 100% swiftness uptime, 100% fury uptime, 22 stacks of might, and 100% quickness, and we're blocking mechanics, and we're blocking projectiles. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I consider the very, very, very good HealBrands are also the ones that can maintain the other buffs as well as doing the mechanics and the quickness. So just keep that in mind. Use that as kind of a gauge for yourself, you know, and work on it just one step at a time, right? Learn the pre-buff rotation, because once you know the pre-buff rotation, you can start implementing different parts of it into your fights, right? You see Tome 1 is up, so now, okay, I know from my pre-buff rotation, Tome 1, 5, 4, swap out Staff 2. Like, I know that. It's in my head now, so I'm going to do that over and over and over again during fights, right? And I know when I need to reflect, and I know when I need to do a CC phase. And when I need to do a CC phase, I'm always going to be in Axe, because Axe 3 and Shield 5 is where my CC comes from. And so when I know my team needs it, I'm going to be in Axe, right? I think I've covered everything. I think that's everything to go for heal branding. I am a Guardian main. I do a lot of heal branding for my content, for my fractals, for raids. I teach it a lot to a lot of guildies in MVP. If you have questions, if you want to know additional things, if you think I didn't cover something, please ask questions. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. You can feel free to whisper me at any time. I'll show you my name right here, SoccerStud.8320. Feel free to add me as a friend. Feel free to whisper me anytime. I'm here to help. I'm here to try and just help people get better at the game and do harder content. And HealBrands at the moment in 2021 are basically mandatory in they're mandatory in fractals essentially. They're used in all strikes, and they are used in a majority of raids, at least for the normal casual non-speed running people, right? Like your normal pug kind of stuff. So they're used in a lot of endgame content, and there's a very, very, very big difference between someone who's learning HealBrand and someone who knows HealBrand. And I hope after watching this video that you know all the tips and tricks and tools, and it's just a matter of implementing them into each individual fight. Yeah, I think that's everything. I think we did it, boys. All right, we're going to put this up on YouTube. I hope you enjoy, and have a great rest of your day. See you guys. I almost did it. I almost forgot, but I didn't forget. I didn't forget to show you guys that alternative build I was talking about. Alright, so let's get into it real fast, because I showed you guys that there's an option where instead of running the Condi Cleanse mantra, we change that to hold the line. So, let me just tell you off the bat, this is something I recommend for newer heal brands that are struggling with the players they're playing with, and for newer heal brands that are struggling with the lack they are playing with. All right, for for a multitude of reasons that we'll get into here for a sec. So let's just talk about hold the line for a second. Hold the line is a shout, and because we are running hold the line, if you choose to do this build, go into your specs, go into honor, go into the third row here, and instead of Rid of Persistence, if you run hold the line, you're going to run Pure Voice. Alright, it's going to give your shouts reduced recharge. Alright, so cooldowns are going to come back faster, and it makes it so that every time that you use a shout, you're going to Condi Cleanse, or you're going to Condi Flip, which is the same thing as Condi Cleanse for our purposes here. Alright, just to show you, these three abilities are all shouts, which means any time that we press any of these abilities, we are additionally removing conditions from our squad. Alright, so let's talk about hold the line just for a second. Alright, hold the line gives you 12 seconds of protection and regen. Alright, so healing and protection, and on top of that, it's going to Condi Cleanse you. Alright, so those are the three big things we're going to get. Alright, now this would be taking the place of our Condi Cleanse mantra. So let me go say it right off the bat. The mantra will Condi Cleanse and heal more than hold the line will. Alright, it's going to heal more. But let's talk about why this is better for newer people just for a second, in my opinion. Alright, mantras are directional. Mantras shoot out directionally in front of you, which means if your team is not stacked in front of you and doing good, alright, then you're not hitting everyone with mantras. If you don't hit people with your mantras, they are useless to whoever you're not hitting. And for example, if you're newer on HealBrand, maybe you struggle with getting in front of people, or maybe you struggle with your own positioning. Maybe everyone is stacked right here, and the boss is right here, but you keep turning on accident and going over here, and you're shooting your mantras off this way. Those aren't going to hit anyone, which basically means your mantras are useless, and they're not helping anyone. Or what's more likely happening is you're pugging, and your DPS players aren't very smart. So let's pretend that you're pugging and your DPS players aren't smart. You have one or two people standing right here, and the boss is right here, and you're doing your job, and you're standing 2 inches behind them, right? And you're standing here. But now you got Bobby over here being a dummy, and you got Joey over here farting around in Narnia, all right? And you're standing right here hitting these two with your mantras, and Bobby and Joey are off flirting around doing whatever they're doing, and they're dying. And then they're like, oh my gosh, where are my heals? And you're like, dude, you're an idiot. Just stand close to us. And they're like, I can't handle the WASD keys. I can't do it. Do better, right? Something like that, where they try and blame you for their problems, all right? This is a shout. Shouts are radial, which means they go out in all directions for whatever the range is, right? And just for example, just to show you, the range of all your mantras are 450 units directional out in front of you. The range for your shouts are going to be 600 units. So it goes a little bit farther, and it's radial all around you. It doesn't matter which direction you're facing. All right? This is why, 1, it might be very beneficial. 2, as an Alack player, a good Alack can maintain protection uptime for your squad for 90-ish% of the entire fight. And for those that aren't aware, protection makes it so that you take 33% reduced damage. all right, which is essentially mandatory when doing end game content. You essentially want 100% protection uptime, right? If your lack is very good, they can cover this on their own. If your lack is newer, if your lack is learning the class and you don't really trust them and they're struggling, right? Then if you run hold the line, you are now giving 12 seconds of protection on a 20-second cooldown, which means you by yourself can maintain like 60% protection uptime just by yourself. And remember, if the Alak is good, they can do 90% by themselves. So the worse off they are, the more you kind of need to step up in helping with the protection side of things, right? As well, it's a shout, which means it's also going to Condi Cleanse. So we removed our Condi Cleanse mantra. And if we remove our Condi Cleanse mantra, we're going to use our shout, hold the line as an additional Condi Cleanse. Remember as well, we still have the ability to blast our fields. So if we lose the Condi Cleanse, we can still staff 3 into staff 2, and we can still go Tome 2, skill 5. So we still have those forms of Condi Cleanse as well. Plus, every time we press a shout, we're also Condi Cleansing. So we still have the ability to Condi Cleanse. We haven't lost that. We just have less of it. And we have a little bit less on the regen side, but again, this also gives regen. It's just a little bit less than the Condi Cleanse mantra. All right. So, again, this is an option. I recommend it for people that are struggling with the group they're in, and especially if you're struggling with getting people to group or you're struggling with directional mantra hits. This is just a nice, easy way to go about it. I have ran all hard content, raids, CM raids, fractals, CM fractals, strikes. I've ran it with hold the line, and it completely works, all right? It absolutely works. You're getting just a little bit less value than if you use the Condi Cleanse mantra and are proficient with the mantra, all right? And again, one more time, if you decide to try this and you're going to run hold the line here instead of the Condi Cleanse mantra, change your honor third one from Rid of Persistence to Pure of Voice. Pure of Voice is what makes your shouts Condi Cleanses. All right? If you're not running Hold the Line, if you want to run the Condi Cleanse, Rid of Persistence and put the Condi Cleanse mantra back in, which is going to be Opening Passage right there. There we go. Mantra of Lore. All right? Now we're done. Now I've covered everything. Now I'll see you in the next video. I'll see you guys later.